In this video, I will walk you through the process of creating this animation. Let's get into it. So, to make animations, you will need Photoshop and After Effects, but I will be assuming that you have basic knowledge of Photoshop. You will also, obviously, need a diagram to animate. I'm going to demonstrate my animation process using this serial section that I made of the Seashore library. If you would like to follow along, there are links in the description. The first step of animation is knowing what you want your end result to be. Create a rough storyboard that illustrates what you want to happen step by step. For mine, I want the isometric view of the library to be segmented, accordion out into sections, and then come back together. The next step is to craft a kit of parts. These are the individual pieces that you need to create your desired animation. Reference your storyboard. Since I want my section to accordion out, I need at least the full building, the segmented building, and the pulled apart building, with each slice being its own individual part. To make a kit of parts, copy your diagram's Photoshop file so that you don't mess up your original work. The goal of this step is to isolate each moving part to be on its own layer. Now, your diagram layers will probably be organized into categories like line art, color, text, etc. To create assets, you need to repeatedly isolate an area and then merge the layers. As an example, I will isolate this end asset. When I toggle this line art layer on and off, you can see that this end section piece is on the same layer as the other section pieces. To isolate it, I created a selection using the lasso tool and press Ctrl+J. Repeat this step for however many layers you need to separate. I then created a new layer and painted in a white background. It is necessary to have a background so that the animation does not overlap strangely later on. Use Shift or Ctrl to select all of the layers you copied and press Ctrl+E to merge them. With that, the end section asset is complete. Repeat those steps for as many times as you need, and by the end, your layers should look something like this. Once done, export the file as a .psd to your computer. Keep in mind that once you open this file in After Effects, it will be linked, so save this .psd to a place that you will remember. If the file is moved, After Effects won't know where it went, so it's going to ask you to relink the file. Open a new project in After Effects and it will take you to this page. It looks really overwhelming, but you can ignore most of the UI. To get started, go to File, Import, File, and open the Photoshop project that you just created. Change the import kind to composition and keep editable layer styles selected, and click OK. The composition will appear in your project window. Double-click to open it, and you should see all of the layers that you set up in Photoshop in your timeline. To zoom, use your mouse scroll wheel, and to pan, hold down the middle mouse button. If your background is black, right-click on the composition and go to Composition Settings, and there you can change the color to white. My diagram in Photoshop was 17 by 11, which translates to 5100 by 3300. If you want a more standard video format, you can't go wrong with 1920 by 1080, which you can also update in the composition settings. If your display looks pixelated, change the resolution by selecting Full. Okay, now that everything is in After Effects, I need to tell you about keyframes and how they work. Keyframes create movement by interpolating frames between a starting and an ending point over a duration of time. To place keyframes, click the drop-down arrows from your layer and transform. With your marker at the beginning of your timeline, click the stopwatch on position to place a keyframe. Move your marker to the 3-second mark, and then click and drag your object to where you want the animation to end. Bring the marker back to 0 seconds and press the spacebar to play. For smoother animation, select your keyframes and right-click. Go to Keyframe Assist and select Easy Ease. Alternatively, you can press the shortcut F9. Keyframes can animate a combination of things like position, scale, rotation, opacity, and so much more. For consistent placement, hold Ctrl and press the right arrow key to move forward 1 frame, or hold Ctrl and Shift and press the right arrow key to move forward 10 frames. Also, if you select multiple layers using Shift or Ctrl and press the U key, After Effects will show you your placed keyframes. Back to the walkthrough. The first thing that I am going to do is make these layers easier to identify by clicking on the colored boxes to apply a new color. I also deleted my redundant white background layer by selecting the layer and pressing the delete key. On the timeline, if you click and drag a layer, you can change where that layer will pop up in the video. And remember that you can shift or control click to select multiple layers at the same time. The animation starts with blue lines that segment the building, which can be made using a shape layer. I started by moving the layers that I did not need to the side. Next, I temporarily turned off the complete building layer so that the merge section layer could act as a guideline. To create a new shape layer, I selected the pen tool and clicked a starting point. This automatically created a new layer. I then continued clicking points along the guideline. You can change the stroke, fill, and thickness of a shape using the top toolbar. I went with blue and 2 pixel stroke. If you are not happy with your line placement, you can edit that by clicking on the selection tool, clicking shape 1, and moving the points to your desired location. Now, to animate this line, go to Add, Trim Path, and open the Trim Path dropdown. Drag the end to 0% and click on the stopwatch to add a keyframe. Then, move the timeline forward and drag the end to 100%, which will add another keyframe. My stroke ended up being too small, so I changed it to 8. Don't forget to highlight your keyframes and press F9 for a smoother animation. Since I need to do this process multiple times, I copied the keyframes for later. To create another line under the same parent shape layer, I selected shape 1 and used the pen tool. I repeat the same process as last time to draw my line and add a trim path. After that, I pasted my keyframes from shape 1 onto the trim path row of shape 2. Keep in mind that when you paste, your timeline marker needs to line up with your other keyframes. You can snap it to keyframes by holding Shift. I had to repeat this shape tool process 5 more times until I got this end result. The final step is to have the blue lines fade away. To change opacity, open the transition dropdown and go to opacity. Make the first keyframe 100% and the second 0%. I had to move the keyframes around a bit until I was happy with the fade. I also renamed my shape layer to section lines to stay organized. The next step is kind of confusing, but bear with me. The blue lines need to segment the full building, and when the blue lines fade away, I want the segmented building to appear underneath. This means that I need the complete building layer to fade at the same time as the blue lines, which can be achieved with a copy-paste. The next animation will be moving the position of the section slices to create an accordion effect like this. I realized that my section layers were out of order, so I dragged them to the correct spots. Once the pieces were overlapping correctly, I turned down the opacity of the guide layer so that it was see-through but not invisible. This animation explodes outwards. That means that the individual pieces are currently in their end position. Focusing on slice 0, I dragged my marker to be 2 seconds in and selected the position stopwatch to mark this as the ending point. Then, I dragged the marker back to the start of the orange layer and moved slice 0 to line up with the guide layer. For situations that require precision, I suggest zooming all the way in and using the arrow keys on your keyboard to get objects to line up as closely as possible. I worked layer by layer, using the eye tool to focus on one section at a time. If you ease your keyframes on one layer, make sure to do it on all of your layers by selecting F9, otherwise they might move out of sync. After adding keyframes to all of the section pieces, I opened the low opacity merge section that was acting as a guide and changed its opacity back to 100%. I then added a second keyframe with an opacity of 0%. This was lined up with the start of the orange layers. This quick fade makes a good transition between the merge section layer and the orange layers before the accordion out. Next, it's time to add the dashed line that shoots out and guides the exploding section pieces. This can again be achieved with the shape layer and trim path. I turned on my purple guide layer and changed the shape color to gray and the stroke to 3. With the pen tool selected, I clicked in the middle of the building where I wanted the animation to start, and then clicked on the end of the guideline where I wanted the animation to end. To make the line dashed, open Contents, Shape, Stroke, and click on the plus next to dashes. Here you can also change the value of the spacing. Add a trim path, with the first end keyframe being 0% and the second being 100%. I wanted the dash line to be slightly faster than the section slices, so I positioned the keyframes to complete before the accordion animation had completed. I repeated these steps for a second line going in the opposite direction. Once I was happy with the animation, I copied and pasted the layer. Since one of the dashed line layers needs to be in the background, I renamed the layers to be front and back, and then dragged the back dash layer to be underneath the orange layers. After turning off the purple guide layer, this was the end result. Next on the to-do list was to fade in the background and add a flash of blue to highlight the main reading space of the library. I dragged the background layer to the timeline marker and added 2 keyframes for opacity. I ended up spacing these keyframes out so that the fade would be more gradual. Then, I changed the color of the blue layer so that it would stand out and brought it up to the timeline marker. To make this blue highlight blink, I kept switching between 0 and 100% opacity with a spacing of 10 frames. Then, I copied and pasted the pattern to get this effect. Alright, now that all the main parts of the animation are in place, it's time to hit the reverse. This will be a lot less work than the setup because all you have to do is copy and paste everything you already made, but backwards. For example, when I faded in the background, the keyframes were in an A-B pattern. To reverse this and fade out, I would just have to paste the keyframes in a B-A pattern. To reverse the accordion animation, I selected all of the orange layers and pressed U to view the keyframes. I adjusted the timeline marker to where I wanted the animation to reverse, and then copied and pasted the keyframes in reverse order. I did this same process for the dashed lines, making sure that they finished pulling in before the section slices did. And finally, I wrap up the animation by having the complete building fade in at the end using opacity keyframes. This is the final result. Congratulations on making your first animation! If your timeline is longer than your animation, you can adjust that in the composition settings. I changed mine from 12 to 10 seconds. To export your animation, go to File, Export, and click Add to Render Queue. Click on the link next to Output and choose your save location. You could also adjust your render settings, but I don't tend to find it necessary. Once you're ready, click Render. I do think that it's important to note that with the power of video editing, I was able to cut out hours of footage where I was tweaking the timeline. I put a lot of time adjusting the timeline and my keyframe positions until I was happy with it, and that's just something that you have to learn by doing. I have really been enjoying playing around with After Effects, so I hope that you also got some enjoyment out of this video. There's so much more that it can do, and I wasn't able to show everything in this video, so I highly recommend that you play around with the program yourself. Just as a reminder, I linked the project files in the description, so if you're interested in studying the final animation, or if you'd like to try recreating this for yourself, feel free. I really appreciate you watching this to the end. Thank you!